Good morning and welcome to the Northern Territory in the Black Indigenous Business Resilience Program. Today is our campfire yarn and we're really excited to have an incredible Indigenous lawyer join us today to share. But first let me start by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land upon which we are meeting and talking today. My name is Julianne and I'm on Gimoy Wallaburra Yidinji country in Cairns, far north Queensland, but I acknowledge all First Nations people, our elders, past, present and emerging, and extend my respect to you, your family, your business or wherever you are listening in today. And thank you for those that have joined us. Welcome, Duncan. Thank you for joining today. But today I'm really excited to have Leah Cameron. Leah Cameron is the owner and principal solicitor for Marrawah Law. And I've known Leah for a long time today and been following Leah's journey, which has just been incredible to watch. And so we're really excited to have you on the Yarning Circle today, Leah. So thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here and us all adopting this technology and beaming and all across the nation.
Yeah. But Leah, start just by telling us a little bit about you first.
Sure. So I'm a Palawa Trawlwoolway woman from Tasmania. The last sort of 13 years I've been based up in North Queensland where I started my own business, Marrawah Law. It started off around the kitchen table and nowadays we have a staff of about 12 or 13 at any given moment. And so it's sort of grown far beyond what I first envisioned for it. And look, we're doing really amazing things and have a great team. We specialise in commercial, property, government and Indigenous law. And we do that all across the country, which is pretty amazing. We get to do not just all the boring law, we get to do some pretty fun stuff too.
That's really deadly, you know, because law is such a complex area to be in. So in a real specialised area, and what you do is very specialised. So we're really thankful that you can join us today. And, you know, all the business owners that are listening in, even just getting, you know, what Leah will share today, because we don't often, you know, go to a lawyer or think we need legal advice, but it's so imperative in business, you know, to make sure that we have and we are protected. So I'm really looking forward to our yarn today, Leah. So I'll hand it over to you. So Leah's going to join, going to share some tips and hints around legal. We're actually in the growth stage of our program at the moment. So, you know, it'll be really valuable for people to listen in and take the advice that Leah is sharing. So over to you, Leah.
No worries at all. And sorry, there was a bit of a lag there for a while, but I'm back online again. Gotta love technology.
Yes.
So look, a couple of things I suppose I have about four tips I wanted to go through today, but there's, you know, plenty more we can yarn about and people are always welcome to drop a line. I'm happy to chat at any time. So the biggest thing we've seen, not just in this period, but before COVID, is when people in business, they get super excited about it. And look, let's face it, they ignore the boring compliance obligations. You know, little things like tax, insurance, those sorts of things, a few licenses, maybe putting documents in, you know, agreements in writing, that sort of thing. So first and foremost, I always say, get your house in order. I know it's exciting, but please do that. And so that's what we're going to kick off with, compliance. So it's even more important to be compliant when there's times of uncertainty. And complying means your business dealings will go much more smoother, your cash flow will be smoother, your efficiencies are better. You can just focus on doing, you know, what you do best, your business, without going, uh-oh, did I pay that electricity bill? Did I report back on that contract I had to? Your mind is at ease and you can get on with the job. So that's what I'm going to hone in on first. So if we look at compliance, generally the things you have to comply with are contracts. And contracts, it's very important that you only enter into a contract if you make sure that you want to follow through with it, because it is legally binding. And people sometimes think they can just get a get out of jail free card with them. not that simple. You really need to make sure that you comply with it. Otherwise, people can do things like sue you, and nobody wants that. It's not fun at all. Now, just a little point, contracts don't always have to be in writing. They can be verbal, but of course, absolutely encourage you to try and put in writing, even if it's a really basic contract that you've written yourself, half a page, 1 page, or it can be 100 pages, it's up to you. But it is important that you do have them in place so everyone understands their rights, their responsibilities, what happens if it all goes to mud, all those sorts of things. That's where you look to it. The other thing that's happened during this COVID situation is that many businesses are actually looking closely at their contracts. So I suppose that's something new. First of all, they've got to find the contract, and a lot of people are blowing the dust off them. Where's that signed copy? So dig out.
Up to.
Sorry.
So obviously dig the contracts out, and then business owners are looking really closely at things like payment terms. If there's been a breach of contract, what can I do? What if I'm having a dispute about something? Or what if I just want to get out of the contract? What can I do? And so that's why it's really important to have all those things in writing. And then the first point of call is actually looking at it and going, aha, this is what I do in this situation. Before you go running off, spending a lot of money on lawyers or trying to file a claim in the court. That's where you go to first. So quick tip is get those contracts out, do a bit of a review, do a bit of an audit and see what your obligations are as they currently stand. And look, many people are negotiating, changes to contracts just to make them a bit more flexible at this time. At the end of the day, we all want to come out of this period still doing business with each other, and allowing a bit of flexibility is a good thing to do right now. So the other key question that people are coming to us about is, well, how do I get paid? Money's tight at the moment, things aren't coming through. And sadly enough, we find the case that you don't really know who your friends are until they've got to pay their bills. So what I would say is, if you are engaging in a business dealing with someone, or they are clients, etc., really identify who's on the other side, I suppose, So if it's a business, get their ABN, the company names, the full contact details, etc. Sometimes, ask for identification and that sort of thing, because if there is an issue with payment, you need to know who you're going to chase. And all too often, people, come to a view that it's a particular person, and it may not be. So really, really crucial. So a couple of tips about how to get paid. My advice is that, start off with a gentle reminder, give them a call, say, hey, just checking you've got this, is there someone else I should send it to, remind them about payment terms, etc. At the moment, people are offering payment plans as well if they can't pay right now, or a bit of a holiday for a while and then they'll catch up. So all those things are worthwhile negotiating. And look, if all else fails, sometimes the next step is to go for what's called a letter of demand. So that's a letter that sets out, what's owed and what, why it's owed, and giving them a reminder, look, you need to pay. Otherwise, this is the course of action I'll be taking next. I will consider taking you to court. So lawyers can do up those letters for you, or you can do it yourself. Some businesses just get a lawyer to do it as a once-off, and then they trot them out every now and then when naughty people don't pay their bills. But it is a useful tool for business, and sadly you do have to use them, so have it there ready to go. And we'll probably see them more and more often. And the last option is obviously weighing up if you go to court or not. Sometimes people phone us and say, look, this person owes me X amount of money. And I say, well, look, this is the cost of going to court. And you really need to weigh up whether you're throwing good money after bad. Having saying, it's all about the principle of the thing is a wonderful thing to say, but if you've got to put the money down, sometimes you've got to make a commercial decision as well, whether you proceed and take the action on the court. Quite often, some people do go to court by themselves, depending on the amount owed. but other times they engage lawyers as well. So just a couple of tips there about going to court if you have to, or trying to get money out of people, which is not fun. So the last thing I wanted to really sort of hone in on at this particular time is COVID and compliance considerations. So obviously, you know, everything's a bit topsy-turvy. We've got, you know, all of us have signed on for leases. You know, we might not be able to be in those premises. We might not be able to have staff socially distancing. All these tricky things are in place. And we need to be compliant, but still run our businesses. And, you know, I know people in the Northern Territory don't just restrict their business to the Territory. They go and do business all across the country as well with their fantastic businesses. So the important thing to consider is, well, righto, I also need to not just be compliant here, I need to be compliant in the other states that I'm operating in. That's a huge burden, because the different states and territories are in different levels of lockdown or coming out and all those sorts of things. So it is tricky compliance-wise. But thankfully, each territory and state have got some really good guidelines, templates or precedents, so you can start to follow that. And there's also various hotlines, etc., that you can call to get further assistance. So first of all, obviously there is, as I mentioned, a lot of the compliance required is also dependent on the particular industry in which you operate. So, for example, some industries that have different requirements are if you're in, you know, to beauty therapy or cosmetics or tattooists, that's one particular area. Then you've got people like tour operators or restaurants and cafes, general business, you know, like a legal practice, events, and then we've got sports and recreation. So there's a real mix out there, and of course each of them have different requirements because they have different levels of human interaction in terms of how close you are. You know, you're more likely to be really close next to a beauty therapist who's doing your eyebrows or your hairdresser than you are, you know, on a tour, you know, into a national park, etc. So that's why there's differences, and you need to make sure that you follow the correct one for your industry in your state and territory and seek further guidance if you do need to. So one of the things we all need to do is make sure that in many states and territories, you need a COVID safe plan. So that's, as we've said, that's all about protecting your business and your staff, as well as your customers as well. So it's best for everyone. It means we can get back to business and do it as efficiently as possible. I should also say that you need to make sure that you're prepared in case of a COVID case, or if you're, you know, think about what would happen if someone walked in and audited you. It's good to cross-check those things and work out, you know, beyond just the piece of paper, do a bit of a stress test to make sure it all works when it needs to. So obviously as well, not only do we have to have these plans in place, we need to make sure that we're compliant with workplace health and safety laws. So you still need to implement measures around that, including having staff working from home. That's really crucial. So obviously, you know, staff working from home still might need ergonometric chairs, you know, good screens if that's the kind of business you're running, making sure they're okay, and you do assess all those risks and support them where needed. Just another thing we've noticed in particular recently is around discrimination and COVID-19. There has been a bit of an uptick in that area as well, and we'll shortly be releasing a fact sheet which you'll be able to view on the Facebook page for this. And it's basically giving you a little bit information saying, yes, you still have a duty to protect workplace health and safety and your staff, but it doesn't mean it's okay to discriminate, which is a really important point at the time.
Can you give us any examples of that, like how people have discriminated during COVID-19?
So a couple of examples are people have said, well, we can't employ you because it's too risky as an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander person or an older person. at the community, because the health of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples is generally not as good as the general public. We all acknowledge that. So it's been a bit of an excuse, I suppose, in some areas to sort of put us in a worse situation, and an excuse not to be compliant. So there is no excuse for that sort of behaviour. There are plenty of protections that can be put in place without having to give people the boot on discriminatory grounds.
Wow. Like, I'd heard of some discrimination and stuff, but didn't realise it was becoming so prevalent during this time.
It is,
so
yeah, it's really sad. And particularly we're finding a lot of younger people, apprentices, etc., they're in this situation and they're just giving them the boot, or just saying, just don't turn up. And I think some businesses have still been claiming JobKeeper. So it's a very, very tricky situation at the moment, but there is plenty of assistance out there for people in those situations.
Thank you.
So there's, a couple of quick tips around compliance, getting your house in order, COVID-19 compliance as well, and most importantly, making sure you get paid and keeping your business going.
Can I just ask a question? I know you were talking before about contracts being legal binding, and you're saying that about having a verbal contract, but making sure you have a written contract. How legally binding is a verbal contract? Does that have much grounds? Like, how does that?
Yeah, so some contracts are legally binding if it's verbal. So, I mean, we quite often do that all the time. Recently, you might phone up and go, ad in the newspaper for a load of wood. Phone up, yep, I see you've got it for $400. I'd like that. Can you deliver it tomorrow? No worries. Yes, I'll do it. I'll transfer the money overnight. Transfer the money. Old mate never shows up. So that is a legally binding contract. You've performed your side of the bargain by giving the money. They said, yes, they'll turn up. They haven't turned up. So obviously, you wouldn't want anything in writing in that particular circumstance. It just doesn't need it. Other circumstances that's more serious, particularly dealings in relation to property, have to be in writing. So there's particular laws around that sort of thing. There's also contracts where, which are verbal, where people just offer you certain things off the street and you just go, oh, yep, I'll take that, thanks, I'm selling, like at a market, or all those sorts of things. So yeah, it does change from the situation, the seriousness. Usually the more money you pay, the more likelihood, or the more likely that you would put it in writing, because there's more risk associated with it.
That's really interesting, because sometimes we have verbal conversations and you assume that, especially in business, you assume that if you're giving away your cultural IP and your IP in a business conversation, that automatically puts you into that contract that other business may have. But then sometimes it's not forthcoming, or someone you'll embed your knowledge with them into that. Could be a tender or a request for quote, and then all of a sudden, if you have nothing written, then you're left out, which happens all the time.
It does, yeah. I suppose there's a lot of people out there as well who are happy to talk on the phone or in person to you, great yarning, yes, we're going to do this, yes, I commit to doing Y, but you never get it in writing. And I always say, well, that's a bit of an alarm bell going off. So I'd strongly suggest in those situations that you send an email or a letter or whatever it is, outlining your understanding of what the situation is and saying, well, can you confirm? Because then that gives them the opportunity to confirm in writing. And if they never do, as I said, it's those alarm bells going off. Well, why aren't they ever putting it in writing? Why is it always verbal? Oh, yes, that's all fine. That would be very concerning if I was in that situation.
Thank you. That's really helpful advice. So, yeah. Sorry, I was going to give you a bit of a pause there before I asked some more questions. So I think it was really good what you were saying about getting your house in order, because we don't, with COVID, it's been so overwhelming, and some of the other questions we've had is like, we understand some businesses have been really affected, and you're saying people might owe money. What happens if the other business that owes you money have had such a critical downturn and they aren't able to meet their financial obligations, to pay, which leaves two businesses in a really not a great situation? What to do? Is there any sort of, because I know you're saying give them a call, payment plans, and people have done that, but then the other business just aren't in a position to pay.
That's right. I suppose I would always look at the relationship. If they are a long-standing big client of yours, it's, and you genuinely think they'll be able to trade out of this situation, it is worthwhile considering a payment holiday or a payment plan, or trying to support them in some other way. Because at the end of the day, if you lose that client, you are going to face a bigger loss probably. So that's what I would judge. But if it was a client that sort of swanned in at the 11th hour and never spent much money, then it's not going to make a big difference. So in that case, you'd probably look at it a little bit more commercially, not so much at the relationship, and go, right, what am I going to do here? Is it the letter of demand? Is it taking them to court? If you do go down that track, is it commercially viable? Is it worth throwing that good money after bad? And sometimes you just have to write off debt.
Yeah, and I think it's really important what you were saying about, giving the advice about going to court and how much that actually cost. And some people, it's based on the principle. And then they know what they've done is wrong, but then sometimes that can cost you 3 times. I'm not hazarding a guess. Exactly,
and it's not. It's the monetary cost, it's the time cost, and also the emotional cost. So it really does take its toll on you if you have to hop in the witness box. It's not fun. It's not about the principle. It's actually a really awful situation. So when you speak to a lawyer, if you go down that track, they will say it's absolutely the last resort. It's not a sort of tit for tat situation.
Yeah, because I know we can be caught up in principle sometimes, and we can threaten legal action but don't understand the actual what it costed, and emotionally as well is huge, on a person. And it's really important to preserve our mental health and well-being. So that's really helpful.
Just on that point, when we're talking about our well-being, we've seen sadly a lot of business owners under a lot of strain at the moment. And I suppose it's also a really good reminder that we should also, as business owners, put a power of attorney in place. Should we become unwell? Should we be unable to operate our business for a period of time? And it does happen. Might be because we have COVID. It might be because someone has a stroke. It could be any number of reasons why we can't operate our business for a period of time. So power of attorney is really important. And we should always, check our wills annually, or as often as we check our smoke alarms. Always have that on your compliance audit to make sure you're A-okay and have that in place. Because, many of us are in business for our families or our communities, and we want to leave that great legacy for them. So we do that by doing these boring bits, including, it's difficult. Our mobs struggle to talk about these sorts of things, but it's really important to do power of attorney and will as well.
I never would have thought that around your business, having a power of attorney. And of course, hearing you say that, it makes perfect sense, if something happens around your business, because we always think of it, for our parents.
That's it.
Or, and I've been in a situation with my father who was sick and power of attorney came in because he couldn't make decisions.
That's right.
We have
young people having strokes or all sorts of things. So it's not a matter of age, it's just good business practice.
Yeah, so that's really, and that's the first time I've heard anyone say that. So thank you, Leah. That's really, really, really great advice, actually.
And it's something that you don't need to pay someone to help you with. There's, wherever you're based, there's great online guides, forms you can fill in. The laws around witnessing documents are a little bit different at the moment, but jump online and have a look at it. It's simple and easy. You can get it done today.
The other point I wanted to ask you a little bit was around, like, you understand the COVID plans, but and being compliant for workplace health and safety, but for staff working from home. Because I know quite a few people that I know who are employed and have worked from home, and I actually never asked them. So they just sort of set up a desk, at the dinner table, things like that. And people have loved the option to work from home. But the compliance around workplace health and safety, I've actually never heard anyone. Like, I do understand that in the government, because I have been in a situation years ago where they had to come out and do a plan and check, and then they had to set me up. But for in business, where the people have thought that actually through about workplace health and safety from working from home.
That's it. So there's all sorts of, obviously, as we said, there's like making sure you've got good screens or chairs or whatever. But it also goes down to, well, if you're working in a business where things are confidential, how are those documents secured, or not just physical documents, but online? How is that security maintained when you're working from home? Or how will you deliver, confidential information back to the office? All those sorts of things are really, really crucial to consider. How else can you support your team? It's a good idea to really have a bit of a checklist. Do you have everything you need? I know when it all happened, we were madly buying screens and keyboards and special chairs to make sure everyone was okay, because we knew it would last a while. But yeah, we also cross-checked the security aspect as well, which is once again, compliance for your business. And then the other big consideration for working from home is obviously mental health. We're very, as a lawyer, we're very fortunate that law societies offer great programs for us, our lawyers, because lawyers go a bit bonkers from time to time. Like everyone, we all have those periods. So it's really important that you can consider that aspect of it as well. I know in our team we do regular check-ins still wherever we are. We're based, just to make sure we're okay. But we don't just wait for people to verbalise it. We cross-check on our systems to go, hang on, there seems to be a bit of a blip in the radar here. We need to check in a bit more closely.
So I know a lot of people were going through isolation and stuff, like feeling isolated and, really segregated, because they're used to being with people. Probably was really good at the start. It was like, oh, I'm working from home, but then the isolation hits in, which is really around that mental health and well-being. So, and not sure, we've talked about it a lot and, given a lot of advice, people just calling because they're feeling isolated, they're feeling, not very good in their mental health, including their cultural health and well-being, as well, because they are isolated and they can't go back to country, they can't do ceremony, all of those things. As well. So that's another aspect which is also under workplace health and safety.
It is indeed, yeah. So I know a lot of businesses are pouring more and more resources into this area. We all want to maintain our business and make sure our staff are okay, because at the end of the day, they're our biggest asset. They're our biggest expense. So we need to make sure they're A-okay.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. It's actually been a very interesting and enlightening, yarn today about different things that even I didn't think about, with COVID and the restrictions, and making sure that we are across all of that in our business, but it is so true. Get your house in order, because when your house isn't in order, that's when things tend to go wrong.
Exactly, that's it. It's just smooth sailing once you've got that in place.
Absolutely. Now, is there any last words of wisdom you would like to leave with our viewers today who are listening in?
Yeah, I suppose I always, in terms of law and compliance, I always say, look, the laws always change all the time. It is difficult to keep up to date on everything, but just keep it simple. In a lot of ways, the law is there to protect us. It's not to act as a big stick. So if you do have any questions or issues, don't be really worried about it. Pick up the phone or try and get more information. People are there to help. It shouldn't be a burden. It's a protection at the end of the day.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. No, thank you so much, Leah, for coming on the program today. If you are listening in, this is the Northern Territory in the Black Indigenous Business Resilience, and we're talking with Leah Cameron, co-founder and principal solicitor of Marrawah Law, who's given us some great information today for business. If you are watching this on Facebook, you'd like to know more information, just comment deadly below and one of our team will be in contact. If you're listening to this on YouTube, you can also click on the links to gain more information. But let us finish where we started by acknowledging all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, our ancestors, our elders, our families, and to all of you. And thank you for listening in today. And thank you again, my sister Leah. That was really deadly yarning circle. You know, it was, and I think in business, we're always learning, and we're always learning, and we're always learning, regardless of how big or how small our business. You know, and sometimes knowing these tips and hints is really important for us because, you know, you can go online as well and to gather more information. But if you do have any questions, reach out. You know, don't let it build up. Don't because you don't know what's going on. And, you know, next minute, you know, in our head, we've formed all this stuff in our head. You know, it's important to reach out and to get some help and to ask the questions. So, yeah, very deadly. Thank you, Leah, again for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.